Okay, it's 5:01, and I'm going to call the meeting of the St. Croix County Board to order at this time. And so we'll start with we were going to have an invocation, but apparently the Reverend couldn't get on the Zoom here, so I'll have everybody stand. We'll have a moment of silence. Okay, if you'll join me with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Cindy, roll call, please.
Ed Schachner.
Here.
Sean Anderson.
Here.
Bob Long.
Here.
Kathy Leaf.
Present.
Kara Cook.
Present.
Tim Hall.
Present.
Paul Burning.
Present.
Rick Otino.
Here.
Bob Fiedler.
Here.
Dave Osnes.
Present.
Scott Coner.
Here.
Dan Hansen.
Present.
Scotty Ard.
Present.
Greg Telejohn.
Present.
Okay. Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paulette Anderson.
Here.
Judy Achterhoff. Here. Shelley Tomschick. And Bill Peavy.
Here.
All present.
Okay, before I open up for public comment, I'd just like to make a statement. Apparently there was some misunderstanding of what our agenda was this evening. Some citizens had concern about mask ordinances, and I just wanted to allay their fears that there's absolutely no discussion of masks in any form tonight on our agenda, nor was there intended to be. It may be mentioned in sidebar to another discussion, but there will be no action on anything concerning that. Also, there was some concern on the item number 6, the emergency resolution. And you'll hear the discussion on that later, but that resolution has nothing to do with the governor's order. That was a resolution that we put back in, I believe it was February or March, to the administrator, and that is to allow him to make administrative decisions within the county as far as staffing or increasing staffing as needed because of the virus. And so the discussion will be around whether to extend it or not, and you'll hear what it'll follow in there. So I'll leave it at that. At this time, I'm going to open it up for public comment. We will limit the comments to 2 minutes, please, and I'll do this at random. I understand we're going to have 2 call-ins also, so after I get done with the slips that I have, we'll allow the 2 call-ins, and we'll go from there. So. First, I have Lynn Betzold. And yeah, they can come in and speak at the podium, I think, if that works for everybody. Please just step up to the podium and identify yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Lynn Betzold. I live near Roberts, Wisconsin here in our county. And I just wanted to bring up some awareness to our citizens in regards to any health-related concerns with the new 5G rollout. I had the opportunity to speak with our health physiologist in Madison, Charles Adams, who gave me a lot of great information. He said his hands are tied because of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, Section 332, paragraph C, line 7, that prevents states from making health rulings regarding wireless transmissions. Our state stance is that we have prudent avoidance of wireless. I think many of you have probably heard avoid holding the phone up to your head try not to sleep with the phone next to you, that sort of thing. The 5G is a very different animal in the sense that it hasn't really been tested and it's rolling out very quickly. The frequency is different. The energy, however, is the same. Bluetooth lowers your energy exposure, and using a wired or a headset also would help with avoiding some of the energy that could affect you. There could be health concerns such as panic attacks, chest pain, depression, a loss of breath, which in some cases could mimic what we see in the COVID cases. And so my concern is, again, to raise awareness. Would love to see citizens be aware of these symptoms and take notice of maybe where towers are in their community, and if they or their family are having any symptoms that are problematic, and to please go see your doctor, tell them the symptoms, ask them if they think if there's a way to test for 5G and if that's a factor, because if our state starts to notice symptoms in a certain area or clustered area, that's a nice red flag for them to say we have a concern here. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker would be Virginia Droth.
It's Drath. Good evening, my name is Virginia Drath, and I live at 1541 County Road, Owen Emerald. Cindy gave you a copy of what I'm referring to tonight, and I came tonight to share with you a proposed resolution to the Wisconsin Counties Association's annual meeting next month and ask for your support. This resolution has been proposed by Bayfield County to the Agriculture, Environment and Land Use Steering Committee for Wisconsin Counties Association. In July, this committee passed this resolution along for consideration at the Wisconsin Counties Association 2020 conference in September. This resolution asks for a statewide, and I repeat, statewide year moratorium on new or expanding CAFOs to establish a large-scale livestock study to study air quality, ground surface water, human health, neighboring property values, and local economies due to recent historical concerns statewide with industrial agriculture. We ask for your support of this resolution in light of the negative experiences endured by families in and around Emerald Township recently, as well as the following reasons. Emerald Sky Dairy is currently operating under an expired permit. 3 of the 6 CAFOs in St. Croix County are operating under expired permits at this time. Emerald Sky Dairy is still paying off $80,000 fine to St. Croix County that includes $16,000 a year. DNR has not finished their investigation from the fish kill in Hutton Creek last November due to overspreading on nearby fields by Emerald, Wisconsin. And Emerald Sky Dairy has also submitted additional paperwork to double the size of their current operation. We ask for your support and in word and in letter for this resolution, as the American Public Health Association also recommends this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Roy Solberg.
Hello, everybody. 2 minutes has started. So I come to address the county library tax issue. That's a resolution number 7. Back in 2002, the Hudson Municipal Library, as well as the City of Hudson and Village of North Hudson and Town of Hudson, approached the county and asked to form a joint library. As the county board considered the issue, several of the Hudson's neighboring libraries, including Somerset, Richmond, Roberts, River Falls, voiced their concern that the library taxation and funding that the county had been collecting and distributing would be cut off, and that these neighboring libraries would then be providing services to the residents of the joint library municipalities without any funding at all. In response to those concerns, the Hudson Library Board, City of Hudson, Village of North Hudson, and Town of Hudson all promised that if the county permitted them to form the joint library, they would continue to allocate the revenue just as the county had done. So when a resident of the Town of Hudson checked out a book at Roberts Library, the new joint library would reimburse the Roberts Library just the same as the county. In reliance upon that important promise, the county approved the formation of the joint library. For over a decade, everything went smoothly. But then, due to budget pressures, the Hudson Area Joint Library decided to renege on that promise, and it cut off completely the funding of the neighboring libraries. So now the neighboring libraries' worst fears were realized. They were now providing library service consisting of thousands of books, hundreds of hours of staff time to the residents of the Town of Hudson, the Town of St. Joseph, and the Village of Hudson without any funding at all. In response to those outcries from this negatively affected libraries, the county took action, not to punish Hudson, as every library is short of funding, but to lessen the significant financial burden being caused to Hudson's neighboring libraries by allocating the difference between 100% and 70%, which is the state law required minimum of the funding that would have been paid to the joint library. The joint library still pays nothing to its neighbors, but the county can offset 50% of the harm. So I urge you to support the resolution, which does mitigate the harm caused to the neighboring libraries. Thank you, and it's hard to talk fast, 2 minutes with this on. Just saying.
Thank you.
I'll fall down now. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Jennifer Flanders.
Hi. I was a little late in coming, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to tell you where I live or whatever.
No, that's okay, and
Okay.
you probably missed the announcement, and you're welcome for public comment. We enjoy that, but there will be no action. There's no discussion on masks or anything tonight.
Okay. Is there a discussion on, can I make a comment about it though? Is that what you're, okay. Okay, so, okay. So I heard yesterday in in comments to Hudson, I can't remember what the meeting was, I can't remember what you call them, common council or whatever. Someone in particular was speaking multiple times and said how Wisconsin's numbers have skyrocketed and everything. And so I went on the DHS website last night just to make sure that that is the case. And what I actually found is that the numbers are down in Wisconsin, all over Wisconsin, even in the southeastern part of the state, where there is a higher number of people that test positive. Yesterday alone, there were 7,200 people tested, and of those, only approximately 400 tested positive. That the numbers are, I'm trying to get to the right screen here, sorry. I have this cute little graphic here that shows the different parts of the regions, is what they call it. And this shows the southern, sorry, my printer isn't working, so I couldn't print these off for you. This green line shows the southeastern part of the state where the numbers have been highest since March, but you'll notice that these lines at the bottom are the rest of the states, or the rest of the regions of the state. We're almost at zero. I realize there are a few cases, but not very many. Also, to put children in a mask, I'm really concerned about that because I have a small child, and to expect children to be in a mask all day long is like taping a petri dish to their face. And quite frankly, borders on child abuse. And I'm really appalled that people are not looking into this more when what their focus should really be on right now is allowing doctors to use the medications and things available to them. Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the building now that wish to speak? If not, we'll go to the phone-in ones.
So the first one that requested a remote public comment was Celeste Corberla. Hopefully I got that right.
Oh, boy. Ooh. Turn it down a little bit.
This is Celeste. Call girl.
Hi Celeste, you're live at the St. Croix County Boardroom. You have 2 minutes for public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm the person that the previous speaker referred to. I did submit my public comments via email to all the board members and the clerk. So please take a look at it. It includes references to back up what I say. The previous speaker is misrepresenting the state of COVID-19 in St. Croix County. Since the board met at its regular monthly meeting last on July 7th to today's regular monthly meeting, the cumulative total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in St. Croix County have increased by approximately 60%. They increased by 174 cases from 291 on July 7th to 464 today, August 4th. That's based on the data from the State Department of Health Services and the St. Croix County Public Health Department. Take a look at the COVID-19 dashboard. Also, if you want to look at some more resources, check out Dr. Michael Osterholm, former state of Minnesota epidemiologist, now affiliated with the University of Minnesota. Check out his website and his weekly podcast. He describes COVID-19 as being a forest fire that is burning hot and will continue to burn hot and out of control until it consumes all of the available human wood. The way that we stop the spread is by requiring that people follow recommended public health protections against COVID-19. Those include wearing masks and keeping appropriate physical distance when going out in public or being around people that are not part of your immediate household. This is just science, epidemiology, and fact. We need to deal with them realistically. St. Croix County has excellent recommended guidelines. We need to make them mandatory and enforceable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. All right, the next one is Sarah Atkins.
Hello, this is Sarah.
Hi Sarah, this is Ken Witt, and you are live with the St. Croix County Board. You have 2 minutes
Thank you.
for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Witt. Thank you. To all the county supervisors, I want to let you know I think we need to do our part as citizens of this great state and this great nation to slow the spread of COVID. We need to prevent needless American suffering and death. If you get this illness, it could be easy to get through, but it can also be life-altering. This means we as humans have to be masked when we're in indoor spaces. It's the single best thing we can do for every citizen's health and the economy. Since this now has become a political issue, the war against this virus will not be won without government helping. You need to step in and issue an enforceable mask requirement. People don't have the right to walk indoor spaces with lit cigarettes, sharing their dirty exhales with others. Why should they feel it's right to spread potentially deadly respiratory exhales into indoor spaces? In response to 9/11, we no longer have the right to meet travelers at the gate. We follow these rules because it's the right thing to do. Speed limits, seatbelts, and even drunk driving. None of these things used to be considered against the rules, and now we've set rules. Humanity has always made rules, and this is only a temporary requirement for the greater good of all. This is not about rights or liberties. It's a temporary requirement to do our part to end a global health crisis that has taken our country by storm due to poor leadership from the very beginning. But we've gotten where we are now. It is what it is. So now it's time to reverse our course, require masks and social distancing, and work to turn this health crisis around. We need leadership, and we need it now. Please be part of the solution. I encourage you to vote yes for a mask requirement and an enforceable policy for St. Croix County. I appreciate your time and your consideration and all the work you do as county supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Denzel, I believe I pronounced that right, hopefully.
We're here.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to speak, but to actually use the case numbers is completely irrelevant. What we have to use is deaths, and in our county, there have been extremely few, one yesterday. If we look at the masks that are used, the size of the holes of the mask, the virus is going to escape. Any study that has been done in depth has proved that the mask will do nothing to stop the virus. Any of the controlled studies prove that the mask is basically worthless. So to enforce this in our county and to force our children to wear what the previous speaker said is basically a petri dish is ridiculous. And you're going to find a lot of sick people, and the county is eventually going to be faced with a lot of lawsuits because you're going to have people that are going to get sick from this. So I ask you to please think of our kids and think of our health. It is not healthy. It's detrimental. Please. Thank you.
Okay, at this time then, I'm going to close public comment, and we will move on to the agenda. The next item would be presentations and recognitions. Pat, do you have anything?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, well, as a matter of fact, I do, so. My first mistake ever. Consent agenda is next, please. So I'd entertain a motion to bring it to...
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. We have a second?
Yeah.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. So any discussion? Apparently not, so we'll vote at this time. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed?
Aye.
None opposed? Carries. Thank you. Administrator Thompson, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your service to us over the years. I've had been fortunate to serve with you most of the time you've been here. I think a testimony for you is how well our county is situated financially, concerning the times, of course, and how we're kind of looked up to, I believe, by many other counties in the state. So you will be greatly missed, and hopefully you won't forget us. But just to help you out, we have a little memento here. If you would like to come up, and I'd like to present it to you. It is a paperweight, and inscribed on it, it says Patrick Thompson, St. Croix County, in recognition and appreciation of your dedicated service. Thank you, Pat. Did I say a few words?
Thank you very much. County administrators love paper, so this will come in very handy. Thank you, Dave, and all the members of the board. Thank you. Past and present board members. I don't know, Cindy, how many. I think we had 5 elections since I started in 2011. And I don't know how many board members, maybe 50, close to 50 board members over the past 5 elections. And every single board has been unique and special in so many ways. And so in my letter to the board and to staff, I said that that this decision to leave St. Croix County has weighed heavily on me, and it was not made lightly, and that those were very serious words. And it's not only because of the great things that are going on in St. Croix County. It's a very special place, but it's really the relationships that we have built over the past 9 years. Relationships between administration and the board. We didn't always agree on everything, but we came to appreciate each other's positions and opinions and suggestions. And for the most part, I've had nothing but great support from members of the board. So past and present board members, all thank you so much. You have made my job enjoyable, challenging, and that's all you can ask for in these positions. Secondly, I'd like to thank all the department heads and staff. Several of them are here this evening, and several can't be because of what we're faced with. But wonderful staff and department heads, and I think you as a board should feel proud of the team that you have in place here. Wonderful staff people, dedicated professionals, very smart people in their chosen professions, and they make my job so enjoyable and so, in some ways, easy because of how good they are. And that's all I can ask for. There's very strong professional relationships that I will leave behind when we leave in a few weeks. But I will remember all of you, all of the board members, and all of the staff. I will have great memories of St. Croix County. And so thank you very much. I was not expecting this because it really technically wasn't on the agenda. So you fooled me, but that's good. So anyway, thank you very much. Yeah.
I apologize, I forgot to set the timer. Okay, I guess the next item then would be the administrator's report.
Yes, and just a very brief report. The financial report is in your packet, and this reflects 6 months of of financial activity. We're halfway through the fiscal year. So it's fairly easy to see based on going through the line items where we are on target, on track, and most departments, most lines are on track, both for revenues and expenditures. I will point out that in the Health and Human Services area, we are behind a little bit in revenues for the healthcare center campus, for the skilled nursing facility, the Kitty Roads, and Orchard View. This is not to be, this is something to keep a very close eye on, but it is indicative of the times we're in terms of nursing home financial activity. We are not unique, and our healthcare campus has suffered because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, but you will see the revenues lagging slightly behind, and you will see offsetting expenditures as well. So it's just something to keep an eye on. And I think when you have your financial audit report, probably next month or very shortly, I know that this issue will be addressed. So that is it for the monthly financials. And then you have a report on the capital improvement project status as well. We don't have a sales tax report in the packet, but we do include that in the packet for the administration committee, and we track sales tax activity real closely. And the last 2 months have been record months in terms of sales tax collections. And so we have not seen a decline in sales tax revenues because of COVID. We've actually seen, in some ways, an increase in sales tax activity. Now, that's only reflective through the month of May. Through the month of May, thanks, Ken. And so we're not sure if this will carry forward through the remaining months of the year, but I'm sure Ken will keep a very close eye on that, and we'll be reporting to you on that as we move forward in the year. That's it for my report, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, when I was up at the podium, I spoke of the staff, and I can't say enough about the assistant county administrator, Ken Witt. Ken's been with us for 4 years, and he has done a remarkable job in the 4 years he's been here. And we're lucky as a county. We're very fortunate to have someone of his caliber. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire career, was to be able to find Ken and convince him to in some ways, take a different course. And his background has been in city management. And over the past 4 years, he has become so acclimated with county government, and he has brought a high level of skill to the organization. And we're fortunate that he is here, and the foresight of the board to allow for that position to be created and to fill in the absence of your county administrator, which at the time we did not foresee, but here we are. And so you as an organization and as a board will be well served in the transition. So that's it for my report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Pat. Next item on business then is ordinance to adopt a farmland preservation plan. Pat, are you going to start that, or is?
I believe the Community Development Director is here and Brett Boudreau is on the line. So are there any questions at all regarding this? This comes in front of you from the Community Development Committee.
We need a motion?
Yes.
We should have a motion to adopt.
You're coming forth with the motion, thank you.
Right, I move that we adopt the farmland right.
Okay,
farmland
and
preservation.
Supervisor Osnes on a second. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance as presented and a discussion. I don't think anybody on Zoom appears to want to speak. If you do, raise your hand, otherwise, okay. Okay, I guess we are ready to vote at this time then. We have the motion. Oops, stand by. Supervisor Teljohn, go ahead.
You're on mute.
Unmute, please. Not hearing you, Greg.
Sorry. Can you hear me now? When just point of clarification, when somebody's making a motion on Zoom, we don't know who's making the motion unless you announce it. So could you please state who's making the motion and who's seconding the motions?
I certainly can, and in this case, it was Supervisor Hanson who made the motion to bring it forward, and Supervisor Osnes was the second.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, at this time, then we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item then would be the ordinance repealing subchapter 17 and just a whole long list of things there. I'd entertain an ordinance or a motion to bring that to the floor for discussion. Supervisor Hanson makes the motion.
I second.
Okay, and that's
Supervisor Hall, second.
Supervisor Hall seconds. Thank you. Discussion.
This has been a long time coming, and what it is, and I think there's been an explanation, is that the state of Wisconsin changed their shoreland overlay requirements by law, and therefore we needed to update our statutes. So it's taken more than a year to do this and to get it coordinated with the DNR. Our Community Development Department has worked diligently to do so. Land use people. Brett Boudreau has done an incredible job along with the other staff and Alan Denzer. And I think what we've gone through very carefully, sent it back to the committee for one more month to make sure that it was done well. This is tight and it's ready to go, and I hope that you vote for it.
Further comments? Supervisor Counter.
Thank you. I had an opportunity to go in quite detail into the Chapter 16 portion, and I did have a bunch of questions that had come up during the process. Fortunately, today I got a lot of the questions answered by Ellen Denzer, and a lot more of it made some sense. I want to compliment how the work that they had done putting this together in the organization. After reading through some of the charts and the things and how they had put it together, it made it much more easy for a layperson to be able to find out what's necessary to do for what actions. And so, I want to thank both the staff and Ellen for getting back to me with the information.
Other comments? Questions? Okay, seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote at this time. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Carries unanimous again. Thank you. Next item is resolution amending the 2020 budget and providing additional compensation to public health and emergency management for excess hours due to COVID-19. Pat, are you covering that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution that comes in front of you from the Administration Committee. The administration analyzed all excess hours of salaried employees, exempt employees over the past 8 months. We looked at, yep.
I just realized I did not bring it to the floor. I'd entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for approval. Supervisor Long.
I would move to approve the resolution.
Okay, Supervisor Long makes the resolution and a second by Supervisor Ard. Sorry, Pat, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, wow. You'd think I would have learned all this by now. So anyway, the long story short, what you have in front of you is the list of those employees that have worked excess hours over the past 4 months. The list of the employees is in the packet. The finance officer and the assistant county administrator have analyzed this, and I've looked at the list, and I support this effort. These are employees that have gone above and beyond in terms of the number of hours that they have put in that is directly related to the COVID-19 response effort. And I support this wholeheartedly, and the committee has recommended it to the board. Now, someone might say, well, what about between now and the end of the year? I think Ken Witt and the administration committee may have to revisit this towards the end of the year. It'll be up to the county board if you so choose to, compensate additional hours.
Questions, comments? Supervisor Achterhoff.
Yeah, I have two. One is, are we going to get help because this is an emergency? Is this all going to have to be funded by us, or?
No, thank you for bringing that up, Judy. These are reimbursable dollars from the CARES Act. It states that in the resolution, but I'm glad that you reminded me of that. So these are all reimbursable dollars.
Okay, and my second is, for as long as this is continuing, I would like this to continue. I mean, what makes them less worthy of equitable pay just because it happens to be beyond June 27th? Right.
I think that the board, will take this up, the administration committee will take this up towards the fall or towards the end of the year and make a decision. But we thought we should address this now, and the board can take it up at a later date as well.
So we have to wait for it to come to the board? We can't make anything done now that will just have this automatically get paid to those that are doing overtime in these areas? Or it has to wait for a couple months to go by and then we do it in a lump sum? I don't understand.
Ken, do you want to speak to that? Or Scott?
Yeah, we did offer an option on this resolution that you could extrapolate the numbers out and estimate the rest of the year. So that isn't an option if you wanted to amend the resolution to increase those dollar amounts. Probably the only argument for not doing that now is we don't know exactly what the dollar amount is. So I can give you my best guess of what that dollar amount should be, but we're guessing at this point. So at the end of the year, we'll know the actual dollar amounts. And then two is we don't know how far the grant dollars will stretch. So we know that we'll be able to cover this amount under the grant dollars, but when we get to the end of the year, we might be looking at a scenario where we've run out of money, where we may not be able to pay for all of the extra hours, or maybe we will, or maybe we won't. So we're just going to know more at the end of the year than we would know now. But there is an option if you would like to increase it and not bring it back in the future.
So there's not an option to do it like monthly, at least until we would run out of money. It's like we have to do it in lumps separately? Am I not understanding something? Or is that the way it is?
Yeah, well, the county board authorizes dollars.
Right.
So you tell me what we're allowed to spend, and then I'll spend it.
Well, part of that is how much are we getting in CARES, because that would make a difference. But whether we have the CARES funding or not, I mean, these employees are working hard, and they should be recognized for what they're putting in, no matter where the money's coming from, assuming that we don't bankrupt our county.
Right.
But I just want to, it seems like we're doing this in lumps, and financially, I don't know what's better for us and/or the employee to do it in increments or to just do it in like one or two big payouts. And I'm just wondering if it's been looked at, or this is just the way we're going to go.
Yeah, I'm open to options. Whatever you guys would like, I'll make it happen.
Supervisor Anderson.
So to clarify, we don't know what the limit on the state grant is, but we know that this is covered under it, correct?
Yeah, we know that we received it's $900-some thousand from the CARES grant that's specifically for the contract tracing, which is what this is related to. So we know that we have grant dollars that are going to cover this. What we don't know is how many contract tracers we're going to hire over the next 7 months. So I don't know what the expense side of the grant is. I know what the revenue side is.
Supervisor Long.
Yeah, I think it might be safer just to adopt the resolution as is, and then going forward, we can take a look at it, really even month by month to get a little better idea based on the uncertainty. We're not really sure what we're going to be up against. So I guess I'd suggest we go ahead and pass the resolution, and then we'll keep a close eye on it and respond appropriately.
Supervisor Burnham, go ahead.
So my question is, if we don't know how much money is going to be expended, why are we expending this now and not waiting till the end of the year as a bonus? And if we do need to hire additional people, why expend these dollars right now? Maybe I'm confused, but these are salaried individuals, correct? And with salaried positions, generally speaking, there are roles and responsibilities that those positions have. So I'm not saying that these people don't deserve it. I'm just saying if we don't know what's going to be left and how much we need to spend, why are we going to spend it right now and not take it up at the end of the year and make sure that we have the dollars through the CARES Act to take care of the employees that are busting it hard. So I guess I realize that they're working hard and they probably do deserve it, but there's a lot of people also working hard out there all across the United States and all across Wisconsin that are taking pay cuts and working longer hours too, or losing their business or whatever. So I just think if we could maybe be a little bit patient on this and move it to the end of the year to make sure that we have the dollars from that CARES Act to do what we need to do to make sure that the public health is taken care of and that department has the people necessary. I don't know, am I taking crazy pills here? But I'll let you answer that, Ken.
Supervisor Ard, I think did you want to comment also?
Thank you,
Well,
Mr.
really
Chairman.
quick, my question was to Ken. I'm sorry.
Okay. Go ahead, Ken, finish this.
Administrator Thompson?
Well, I don't think you're taking crazy pills, but I would suggest that you have the funds with the CARES Act funding. I would recommend that we take care of this now, and the board can take this up again later in the year, and you'll have a better picture at that point of how much CARES funding is left, how the rest of the budget looks. You'll have a better idea of how the calendar year is going to end, and then you can make another decision. But I would not recommend waiting in terms of compensating the list of employees. It's not that, it's in the big scheme of things, it's not that large of an amount, and I think we are going to, these are compensable dollars under the CARES Act, and I have a strong feeling that the CARES Act funding is going to extend beyond the end of the year, and so I think we'll be in good shape.
Supervisor Ard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say this to you. I am a salaried employee, and currently I am pulling 70 to 90 hours a week. And that does not include this time, because when I leave here, I will be going back to work. I am not a medical frontline worker, but I am a worker with the homeless population. I have a 7-county area. So I am going from shelter to day shelter to police departments all over, collecting persons who are out, who may be sick, who may be homeless, who just have no way to go. And I'll tell you what, it is a thankless task. For our frontline workers in public health and for those who are doing tracing, every additional hour is an hour away from their family, from events that they'd like to be doing, whatever they're interested in. It is time spent securing this county and the residents of this county and keeping them safe. There truly is no amount of money that we can give to them to make up for that time that they are investing in this county and in the residents of this county. So action at this time, if for no other reason than to let them know that we believe in them and keeping their morale as high as possible, because truly, when you look at the numbers every day, and if you have to review the cases and you have to be there to look at the data, how depressing can that become hour after hour? And when you're running on little sleep and little family time, trying to keep everyone safe, this is the very least we can do, and it needs to be done immediately. No delays, no questions, just do it.
Supervisor Hanson.
Mr. Witt, just so I understand this, it looks like we're talking about $50,000? All right. We're making an awful lot of time invested in debating 50 grand. Why isn't the administrator just making a decision on this? We gave powers to make financial decisions outside of this kind of decision by the county board. That's my question, and I'd like an answer to that. Why, Pat, aren't you just calling this thing?
Well, because my understanding is it involves a budget amendment and it's dealing with compensation. And so that was the reason it was brought forward to the administration committee. Scott, do you have other thoughts on that?
It requires a budget amendment. The funding's outside of the budget. That's correct.
Thanks.
Well then, just to finish my thoughts, why don't we just get on with it and approve it and the way it's written, because we've got a lot of other business to do.
Further questions, discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote at this time.
Mr. Chair, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Okay, roll call vote. Cindy, please.
Ed Schockner,
Yes.
Sean Anderson,
Yes.
Bob Long,
Yes.
Kathy Leaf,
Yes.
Kara Cook,
Yes.
Tim Hall,
Yes.
Paul Burning,
No.
Rick Otino, he's muted. I'm sorry, did he say? Repeat, yes? Okay, thank you. Bob Fiedler? Dave Osnes? Scott Counter?
Yes.
Dan Hansen?
Yes.
Scotty Ard?
Yes.
Greg Telejohn?
Yes.
David Peterson?
Yes.
Paulette Anderson?
Yes.
Judy Achterhoff?
Yes.
Shelley Tomschick? And Bill Peavy?
Yes.
Passes.
Carries, thank you, Cindy. Next item then would be a resolution amending the investment policy. Supervisor Long?
I would like to move to approve the resolution amending the investment policy.
Do we have a second? Second by, motion by Supervisor Long, second by Supervisor Ard. Discussion.
Bob Moore, who is our investment advisor, recommended to the investment committee a revision to our investment policy, which would allow for more options for investments. And we brought this forward to the administration committee, and they have supported the recommendation. And Mr. Witt can explain, and if there are questions regarding the specific changes. There was one suggested revision by the administration committee, and we've incorporated the recommended change to the policy, and it reflects that in your packet. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments? Supervisor Hanson?
Pat, would you mind just summarizing the improvement?
I'm going to turn that over to Ken.
It allows for, which is authorized by state statute, AA corporate security investments, so corporate bonds. And so we looked at the losses on corporate bonds, and there hasn't been a AA corporate bond that's defaulted since 2008, since the last Great Recession. And so they are rather safe investment choices. Corporate bond structures have more investment options and structure options. And so that's why Bob Moore was suggesting, since they are authorized by Wisconsin statutes as one of the safe vehicles for governments to invest in, that we look at that option. We haven't previously authorized that here in St. Croix County.
So we haven't seen one default since 2008, the last, in the Great Recession. But we just had the worst quarter, which is worse than any quarter we saw during the Great Recession. Do you think now is the time to start looking at that kind of an investment vehicle if that was the last time that we saw one fail?
So some of our portfolio will be limited to 20%, so no more than 20% of the total portfolio would be into corporate bonds, no more than 5% into any single issuer. So there is a level of risk in there. When you look at the previous defaults, so if you go down the AA column, in 2008, the 0.43 right there was the last time that one defaulted. And so that's less than 1 percentage point. So that's what your level of risk is. So anytime you make an investment choice, yes, there is some level of risk. So 20% of our portfolio, no more than 5% in any one security. And the last 12 years, there's been less than 0.5% default rate. So do those numbers add up to an acceptable level of risk for the county to invest in? So that's the policy decision that we're asking the county board to make. So it's not a decision just for today, but it's a decision about our investments going into the future. Bob Moore has recommended it. Our investment committee looked at this level of risk and they have recommended it.
I thought I saw somebody up on the screen. Apparently no. Anybody else? Questions? Discussion? I guess we're ready to vote at this time then. Okay, we have a resolution approving the amending of the investment policy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item is a resolution approving the county administrator's work plan report for the period July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. I'd entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Long, second by Supervisor Osnes. Discussion. Supervisor Achterhoff.
I just don't understand why we need a resolution. I mean, this is, I guess I don't understand.
Annually, the County Board of Supervisors establishes goals and objectives and a work plan,
Yep.
and that's approved by the board. So a year ago, the board identified all 7 of these projects to be goals for the county administrator. And so once that once that annual process completes itself, then the administrator is required to provide a report back to the board. And so this is a formal acceptance of that report on the 7 projects that have been identified.
That makes sense, but what difference would it make if we didn't accept it? I mean, you're still gonna, that's what you've done.
Well, it becomes a process of,
I know, that's
Yeah.
why I said my first thing that I can understand why, but it just seems like it's weird.
So this is a boilerplate. This is just the follow-up to the work that you've done in the last 12 months, Patrick. Is that correct?
correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Guess we're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item would be a resolution to extend 2020 COVID-19 emergency declaration until December 31st. Supervisor Long?
I would move to approve the resolution to extend the resolution 15, COVID-19 emergency declaration till the end of the year.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Long, second by Supervisor Ard. Discussion at this time. Pat, did you want to make a brief statement?
Yes, this resolution is an extension of the emergency declaration that the board adopted in March of this year. This allows your county administrator authority to make certain decisions, take certain actions. For example, hiring additional staff in the public health office. It also allows for the emergency purchasing of equipment and supplies, say for the facilities department. It also allows for remote attendance for county board supervisors at both the county board meetings and committee meetings. Our board rules do not allow for that remote attendance, and so by emergency declaration, I am allowing remote attendance to allow for social distancing. And the resolution calls for a report on a monthly basis on any action taken by the administrator, and that will continue, and so that This declaration will now be extended if the board so approves through the end of the year. The administration committee took this up and discussed it and is bringing it to the board for approval.
Supervisor Long.
I think there's just two things that are really important about this. Number one, it just gives us a lot more flexibility to respond. We don't really know what's going to be happening in the next, 5-6 months, this crazy COVID thing. So it gives the administrator flexibility. And the second thing is that allows us to continue to participate in board meetings and committee meetings via Zoom without an actual change in the bylaws. So it just seemed like a smart thing to do to continue it to the end of the year.
Supervisor Brennan.
Inside of this resolution, is there anything that gives us the ability to rescind it in each, is there, I guess what I'm asking, let's say a month from now, it miraculously disappears. Is it possible for us to have it as an agenda item for discussion and possible action for each? I mean, is that possible to put that in there through an amendment or something? That way we're not going all the way to December and then having to wait till November or September and then having to put it on October's to rescind it or whatever. I mean,
I think the board can rescind the resolution at any point.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Further questions, comments? Seeing none, we're ready to vote at this time. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Board members, at this time, I'm going to ask, would anybody like a perhaps 5-minute break? And I see a couple hands, so we'll take a 5-minute recess and return. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the board back in session at this time. Next item of business on the agenda is the resolution establishing the library levy.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the resolution establishing the library levy.
I have a motion by Supervisor Ard to approve the resolution on the library levy. Supervisor
I'll second.
Achterhoff, okay. The second is by Supervisor Achterhoff. We'll have discussion at this time. Supervisor, I'm sorry.
This is Supervisor Hall. Could I just get a explain it like I'm 10 years old version of what's covered? There's a lot of material. So, and I understand it's a very complex issue. Would somebody be able to just walk me through what the resolution is asking?
Yeah, Ken.
Supervisor, Ken, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the library levy, the way it's calculated is all of the libraries provide circulation material to residents no matter where they live. So the cities and villages that sort of own the libraries are paying for the library. And then there's the other part of the circulation that's going to rural areas, the townships. The library then tells us, all right, well, this is how many items were checked out. This is our circulation number. And this is the cost for us for every single item that we check out. And they range from about $3 up to about $6. So the county then has a policy that we've been following that we pay for 100% of that cost then. So the cost for every item that's checked out by a rural resident, the county will reimburse that library for that. And we do it then through a levy. So we levy those townships then for that. So they're paying for the items that they're checking out, just like the people that live in the cities and villages that own a library are paying for their portion of the library. So that's what is happening in this resolution. The comments about the Hudson Joint Library, that gets a little bit more complicated. That dates back all the way to 2002 when that joint library was formed. And there's a redistribution formula that we're applying to that because the town of St. Joe and the town of Hudson are exempt from our library tax because they're part of a library, a joint library. So we can't tax them, and they used to redistribute to the townships for their circulations to other libraries, but since they stopped doing that, we've been doing this redistribution formula. So that's what this resolution is doing. It's a normal 100% funding for town library usage, and then a redistribution on the Hudson Joint Library. And then new this year, which I'm sure there'll be a little bit of discussion on, is the Hotspots funding.
Thank you.
Supervisor Achterhoff.
Do you want me to touch on the 30% or the hotspots? Because I got info on both.
Go ahead, whatever you desire to cover there.
Well, the 30%, I'm just saying that if the only reason the county approved the joint library was on the condition that they would reimburse the other libraries where their community members partook. And they did this for many years, and then all of a sudden, with no explanation, in the middle of a budget season, they stopped. This is our way of trying to ease the pain for the four main libraries, River Falls, Roberts, Somerset, and New Richmond, who, when this originally happened, one of them had to lay off someone. But they're getting some of the money that's owed them, and Hudson is losing some of the money that they feel is owed them. But if we went up to 100% for Hudson, then they should reimburse the other libraries for what their original agreement was. Because if they weren't if that was the agreement from the county board, that the only way they would approve the establishment of a joint library was if they agreed to reimburse the other libraries for the usage, which they did for years and years and years. And this is why we're doing it this way. So there's 5 libraries that are going to be hurt a little, instead of the 4 that will get hurt a lot, and 1 will get money that was not intended for them to have.
Supervisor Hanson.
It's like this. If I go in a restaurant and I order a hamburger, and I look at the table next to me, a guy's eating a hamburger, I'm expecting to pay for my hamburger. The guy at the table next to me then expects me to pay for his hamburger. That's just not fair. And that guy's the Hudson Library Association expecting me to pay for his hamburger. It's that simple. People who don't live in the Hudson Library Association area shouldn't have to pay for the library resources that are checked out by the people who live and are served by that library. It's not fair. There was an agreement made, it was reneged upon, and now those libraries, those smaller libraries, are needing to carry a burden if we don't make this adjustment. So the way this resolution is written makes a correction for that, and we need to continue to roll with that. We need to continue to make that adjustment. That's only a small thing that we can do. We're required to pay that 70% by state law, but it's something that the county board has sought fit to do in a couple of past years since the Hudson Library Association has stopped paying their apportionment, their reimbursements. So it's complicated. It's a complicated scheme of reimbursements, one library to the next. It's important for everybody to understand that if somebody from New Richmond or somebody from Baldwin takes a book out of the Hudson Library Association library, those smaller libraries are actually paying their reimbursements to the Hudson Library Association. So they're getting their payments from the smaller libraries, even though they refuse to pay the reimbursements in the opposite direction. So what we're doing here isn't unfair in any way. And I suggest that everybody just pass this resolution the way it's written. Thank you for listening.
Further questions, comments? Supervisor Burning.
I'm sure you're all shocked to hear from me on this issue. All right, so I'd like to address the hamburger analogy and that is completely wrong. That is an incorrect analogy. That is not taking somebody's hamburger, because as you so eloquently put, you're taking something that someone else expects to utilize that they're paying for. So my question, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Witt, if you could answer this, is how much do City of New Richmond residents pay for usage of the Hudson Area Joint Library? How much do residents from the Village of Somerset pay for usage to the Hudson Area Joint Library? How much does Glenwood City and Deer Park and the City of River Falls Municipal Library, how much do those residents get levied to use the Hudson Area Joint Library?
So are you asking about the circulation as a definition of use?
How much does the county levy against those residents to use the Hudson, and when they use the Hudson Area Library?
Yep.
Not the surrounding municipalities, but those actual municipalities, the residents of those municipalities.
Oh, of the cities and the villages?
The
Correct.
City of River Falls, the Village of Somerset,
Yep.
the Village of Roberts, the Glenwood City Library.
Right.
How much do those city residents get levied by the county?
0.
Okay, so if a resident from the City of New Richmond comes and uses the Hudson Area Joint Library, the county has no taxing authority over that resident who just used the Hudson Area Joint Library's hamburger, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, so we can dispel that analogy. The fact that there was no explanation at the time of this being done is also incorrect. The joint library and the president at the time made a concerted effort to reach out to municipal leaders of each of the municipalities who are going to be affected. And when that happened, the municipal leaders indicated that they were all in this together coming out of this recession, and that they understood why the joint library needed to do that. Maybe not all the leaders, but they did reach out to leaders. So to say that there's no explanation is also incorrect. The harm is a very powerful word, to harm a library. I've heard that term dropped multiple times. When we are looking at anything legally, when you say harm, that is a powerful word. So I would suggest that if we're going to say that much harm has been done, material needs to be produced as to how the harm, thank you, Ken, how that harm was done. Going back to the approval of the joint library, and so for many of you, this is brand new, and for some of you, this is old, so I appreciate you allowing me the time to go through this. But in 2002 and in 2004, when the area library agreement was amended and the county was allowed to, our county allowed St. Joe to come in and the village of originally the village of North Hudson and the town of Hudson to have their own library, and in doing so, chose to share it with the city of Hudson and hire a director together. There was a promise made of that. I can't deny that, and I'm not going to deny that. There was a promise made. However, when does that promise end? Now, to the understanding of some who voted to join the Hudson Area Joint Library, some of the municipal leaders, that promise was not going to be in perpetuity to double levy their residents for the library. Granted, it was a promise made in the origination of the joint library, but at the same time, when we're looking at it from a legal perspective, there is no ordinance and there is no resolution tying to the formation of the joint library requiring that funding to be in perpetuity. So when it comes to a promise, when does that promise end? I'm going to use an analogy. I've thought long and hard about this analogy. Someone could pick it apart if they want to, but I make a promise to my neighbor. They get in a car accident or something happens to them. I promise to get their mail and help them go grocery shopping. Something happens to me. Either I move out of that house that I'm next to my neighbor, or I pass away. Are my children or the people that move into that house next to the neighbor obligated to fulfill the promise that I made to that neighbor to help them out? Now, no doubt, there were libraries depending on this revenue. There's no question about that. The question remains as to whether or not we can come to a consensus as to when the punitive damages, which last I checked, punitive damages should be levied out by the judicial system, not by legislative bodies through prejudice. That's exactly what this is. This is picking on one library, and I'm asking that we somehow figure this out. And no, it's not going to be that we're going to double levy City of Hudson residents to pay for books in other residents or in other municipalities. So everything that's being touted here, that we reneged on the promise, you know, there's no ordinance or resolution tying to that. So by definition, that promise was made by people that cannot necessarily keep the promise. So I ask that you reject this resolution with me, put the bickering off to the side, and let's figure out how to move forward together and fund the Hudson Area Library. Thank you.
Supervisor, I saw somebody that didn't. Supervisor Anderson, did you have your hand up? Okay. Go
I'll be
ahead,
quick.
Supervisor.
Just to clarify, the only thing that we're talking about is the remuneration. When a resource is checked out by a person who lives within the library's area of service, then that library will reimburse. No?
You have that wrong.
Well, then explain it.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
Okay, if a district that does not have a library uses a library in another area, that library will be compensated for a non-resident using the library. That's the difference. I mean, Richmond can go to Hudson, Hudson can go to Glenwood City, and there's no money exchanged. It has to be, okay, and this was one of the concerns that the board had when the joint library was first going to establish itself, is that there were many residents who joined the joint library that were using other libraries that had counted on that funding and were losing it, which is one of the reasons that the board made the decision for them to continue. And if you'll notice that the 30% that we are using to distribute to 4 main other libraries, River Falls, Roberts, Somerset, and Richmond, that is less than what they actually should be getting. So Hudson's actually making out better by not paying them and just getting the 70%. But by giving them 100% and not expecting them to pay what they agreed to do. And I didn't realize there always had to be an end date on something. And I think that at least until there's some kind of accommodation that will agree, that they can all agree on, it should continue. It shouldn't be stopped by one library where it affects multiple ones. But as it is, this way, 5 libraries are possibly a little hurt, but they'd be a lot more hurt, and Hudson would have money that the board was not intending them to have by reneging on their agreement. I hope I explained that right.
Supervisor Hart, did you want to speak? No.
Yes, Supervisor Burning, would you please explain to me what the double levy is within this equation? Because I'm not understanding where you're getting double levy from.
Is this going to take up one of my... Yeah, what I'm asking is...
I'll consider the response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to levy for operations and the funding of our library, and then on top of it, there's got to be a line item then in order to pay whatever you consider to be the usage tax that the county can no longer levy against these municipalities. So yes, it's we're not taxing on two separate lines, but we most certainly are going to be asking our stakeholders to levy more money than it would necessarily take to operate our libraries. So that would be the explanation. Maybe it's not a double levy, but it certainly is an extra levy or an extra amount on the levy that those municipalities have to pull in order to pay those dollars.
Thank you for that clarification. What I will say to this issue is that under 4364 of state statute, we have language regarding the county tax. We also know that our main libraries, New Richmond, River Falls, Somerset, their communities choose to fund their libraries at 100%. Therefore, they are not subject to the county tax for libraries. Within the circulation tax, this is one of the greatest costs that libraries incur with patronage. Until Hudson Joint Library can get their finances straightened from the financial hit they took back in the day, they're going to struggle. But as Supervisor Burning has brought up, how long does a promise last? Forever. Or until they are able to financially stabilize their operations. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the question on this topic.
Supervisor Cox, I'm sorry, Corp Counsel Cox, I'm a little foggy on the calling. Does there need to be a second, or is that?
You're on mute, Scott.
What that is a motion for the previous question. If there's any objection, then it has to be raised as a motion, and it needs a 2/3 vote.
Can that be further explained?
If anyone objects, then you gotta get 2/3 vote.
You're calling for the vote to stop discussion.
Yeah.
Does anyone want?
I object to that if that's what I have to do.
Okay, we have an objection, so then now we have a motion, I assume by Supervisor Hard. Would there be a second?
For the previous question.
For the previous question. Supervisor Achterhoff.
But if you remember, when I first spoke, I said there were two areas, and I haven't had a chance to talk about the second area yet. And can I do that before we call the question?
Yes,
So is there a second?
No, she was referring to something before this occurred, I guess, so I'll let her finish her second.
Yeah, okay. Mine is that this has nothing to do with the Hudson Library. This has to do with the hotspots. And this is why it's something different, is that the finance, in order to equitably supply all 11 libraries with 2 hotspots, it would be $791.64 per library instead of the $720. I just wanted to bring that up, because even if all the libraries had the lowest cost hotspot carrier, it would be $756.24. But there's one library where no one is able to use the lowest cost one, and another library where a majority of their users have to use one that costs a little bit more, which is why the $791.64 per library is fair across the board, whether you're a rural library or an urban library. And I would like to make an amendment to change, I don't see it in the resolution, but I know it was supposed to. I would like to change the 720 to 791.64 to make it fair for all the libraries.
Second. Did you make a motion?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, that's, yes. Okay.
Yeah, just to change that amount.
How does this work? We're kind of in a bomb right now.
We are, yeah. I'm considering the called question suspended because this would have to be included into
Yeah.
it. So taking precedence, in my judgment, is Supervisor Achterhoff's motion to change the hotspot cost up to $791 or whatever it was from the previous figure. That was seconded by Supervisor Burning. And do we have discussion on that?
Point of inquiry.
Go ahead.
Can we split out the library funding, the county levy, and the cost for the hotspots? Can we take, is it possible to make a motion to do two separate votes on that? Oh my gosh, this is
Yes.
such a cluster. Jesus. No.
You can, I think it's divisible and it can be done by motion. So if there's a motion to divide.
So do I have to withdraw my original motion to change it to 791? And can I withdraw that and make a motion to divide?
I would accept that.
I was asking Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Any painkillers?
Okay, so I withdraw my motion to increase per library funding of $791.64 for each hotspot and make a motion to separate the hotspot funding versus all the other funding. Is that okay?
But then I think you need to amend that motion to change the total, wouldn't you, Scott?
Correct.
Okay, I make a motion to divide the resolution and into two areas, and the hotspot will go up to $791.64 for each library, and the other, we still have to discuss, because that hasn't
Does it have to
been,
be two motions, Scott?
Correct. It should be two motions.
okay.
First one is to divide, and then if you want to amend the divided.
Oh, okay, I'm
Comes
sorry.
from
I
four.
thought I had to do that in one, sorry.
So you're leaving your motion as to divide.
Divide
the two
between the hotspots and
the other
the rest.
Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Achterhoff, a second by Supervisor Tomczyk to separate the hotspot funding from all the other funding. And so is there discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, did you want to make your financial?
Now I'll make a motion to increase the hotspot funding to $791.64 per library.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to increase the funding on the hotspots to $791
That's per month.
per month. And that was by Supervisor Achterhoff, the second by Supervisor Burning, I believe, was it? So, discussion, Supervisor Osnes.
Where are we right now?
We're-
Are we amending what? First of all, we've divided the library funding with the hotspots. Those are two different areas.
Correct.
We have not taken a vote on that yet, correct? Or we
No,
did
we're-
take a vote on that?
She's changing the amount in the hotspot only, just changing the amount so that that's sitting there, for lack of a better term, ready to go after we address the other one.
Okay, all right, then I'm okay.
Judy, did you say that was monthly? Because I understood that was an annual subscription amount. I wanted to make sure we clarified that because it was not the intent to have that as.
Will that be $791.64 per month per all the 11 libraries? So you'd multiply that by 12. I mean, by 11. Okay, wait a second. You'd multiply that by 12, and that you'd have your total amount that it would cost you for all the hotspots for all the 11 libraries.
So,
That's not right. That couldn't be right. You've got a
That's a
total
little-
of 7920. Oh, forgot to turn it.
Oh,
You've got a
I
total
have
of
this.
7920 along with the annual expenses for the libraries. I think you're mistaken on.
It's $791.69 per library. Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. So if you multiplied that $791.69 times 11, you'd have $8,708.64. But it's not going to be evenly distributed between the 11 libraries because there's 2 libraries that have to have hotspots that cost more.
I'm confused.
I can't blame you. I'm sorry about that. Okay,
$790 some dollars per year per library?
correct,
Or is it $790 per month per library?
per
In which
year.
case, your ISP.
Or per library. The average cost per library would be $791.69
Per year,
per year.
okay.
Ken, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a clarification if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
All right. So I understand the total dollar amount, Supervisor Osterhoff, but you don't want an equal distribution between all the libraries? You want it to be distributed differently than equally?
Correct, because there are 2 libraries that need a little bit more. The total would be $8708.64, I believe.
All right. So the resolution attaches this spreadsheet. So we would need to denote on here which 2 libraries are receiving a different amount.
That's going to be Spring Valley and I believe Woodville. Spring Valley gets 2 that are different and Woodville gets 1. And it's 870804, my mistake. I really have researched this. I got confused, but I'm positive about the 870804. I'm positive that there are 19 T-Mobile hotspots, and there are 3 others that are non-T-Mobile that cost more.
Wasn't that brought up at admin? John?
Mr. Otino, go ahead, unmute yourself and go ahead with your. Breaking up.
Maybe have him type it.
Can you type your question? Ken's busy trying to straighten out the paperwork here, and we should get to you in a moment, hopefully.
Mr. Chair, didn't the admin committee have these numbers at their last meeting, either this last month or the month before, that we had all those numbers?
we did not have any revised numbers. We had the 720. Per library, yes.
And these were I was on the phone with Barb. I can give you the exact amount that the other 2 libraries, what their monthly cost is.
While we're waiting, Mr. Peavy indicated he also would like to make comments, so till we get Mr. Altino lined up so we can hear him, go ahead, Mr. Peavy.
Thank you. So I'm going to really confuse the issue. This 8,708.14 would be a levy on the rural townships only. And rural townships shouldn't have to pay for all the hotspots. Hotspots are used in the village, and I'll defer to Supervisor Ard, who did some checking in Richmond. 25% in the Richmond, were used in the village. So why should the rural resident have to pay for all the hotspot? And the way this is here, this would only be a tax on the rural residents. Remember that this library tax is only on the townships, and I don't think it's fair that the townships have to pay the whole cost of the hotspots. You know, for any that don't realize, this is property tax based, and I've said this for 16 years now. I got smart cows, but they don't use the library. But my pasture, my cornfield, my barnyard pays library tax, which isn't a decision we make here. That's it's a statute that is property tax based, but it's not fair. And then to put the hotspots solely on the rural residents, I don't believe is fair. Now, how we would change that percent, I have no idea. Mr. Witt would be challenged to do that. But the way this is written here, I don't think it's fair. And before we get done, I will be making a motion to eliminate the whole hotspot being on the property tax on the library levy, and make it back on the general fund, so all citizens of St. Croix County pay for the hotspots. But we're in the middle of I'm not going to make that motion at this moment because I don't know where we are. And Mr. Cox is here now. I think he might be able to help us, but at some point I will be bringing that forward. Thank you.
Ken, your comments, or you finished there with what you need?
Yes, I had just done the math that Supervisor Osterhoff was talking about. So the way I calculated, all of the libraries, 9 of the 11 libraries would receive $756.24 annually, and then Woodville would receive $886, and Spring Valley would receive $1,016. I don't know if that matches up quite with your math, Supervisor.
I just know that Woodville, they had one at $31.51 per month, and one at $40.01.
Yeah.
And then Spring Valley had 2 A&T that both of them together were $87.02 per month.
Okay. So we can tweak those numbers, but that's
Okay.
basically what it's going to look like. You're going to see 9 of them at the same dollar amount at roughly $756. Woodville about $886, and Spring Valley about $1,016. We'll tweak that to the exact math that Supervisor Osterhoff has. But for the purpose of the motion, I just wanted to make sure we were illustrating what it was that she was requesting.
Okay, if we don't get this cleared up shortly, I may send it back to committee. Supervisor Osnes, did you have something?
I was just wondering, Mr. Chair, if we could, if we're going to separate this out, would it be appropriate to at least look at the hotspots and send that particular part back to admin and move forward with the other part of this right now?
That's probably the best plan, I think. So, okay, so I guess right now, okay, Ken, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So the one issue with that, we do this in the summertime because this resolution sets the amount of the levy that we're going to be levying. That levy amount, the cities and villages have to match in order to qualify for an exemption. They have to budget for that and then approve a resolution declaring their exemption from the county library tax before we adopt our budget. So there's other pieces that are involved with other jurisdictions. So while I'm not opposed to you sending it back to committee, there are some time constraints that does cause issues with.
Okay, I guess Supervisor Hall, go ahead.
Yeah, am I to understand then from what you just said, Council, that it's not just the rural townships who are contributing to the hotspots, but there's also matching funds from villages?
No, not specifically, Supervisor Hall. So the cities and villages that own a library, they have to fund at a level that's equal to the rate that the county is levying at. If they do, they qualify under state statutes for an exemption from the county's library levy. So if they're funding at an equivalent dollar value per capita, not per capita, but per equalized value, then they can exempt from the library tax that we're imposing here. And so it's not a direct that they're funding hotspots, it's that they're funding at an equivalent equalized rate.
So it's not like this is just all rural, because the only reason it's rural is because the communities that have a library are already funding their libraries. Whereas the communities that don't have a library, it's not all just land. There's a lot of people that live there too that use the library. And that's why the levy is equal to that amount of them using it. I understand that the hotspots are extra, but that amount is for the benefit that it contributes. I mean, there's a waiting list for the hotspots. And now with schools possibly not being able to meet in person, it's even more important. So it's the majority of the money, I think, is coming from rural. If you can use the word all, but part of that funding is because rural residents are using the libraries in areas that the rural residents in a community that do not have a library are using libraries, which is good.
Further discussion? On the hotspots.
My audio working? Mr. Chairman?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm having trouble with the definition of the hotspot. My wife's school in St. Paul uses them when the student doesn't have access to the internet. How many hotspots are we talking about for this amount of money? And it is, am I right? Is it going to like a certain household that doesn't have access? What is the actual definition of this money for the hotspot?
Supervisor Achterhoff, you want to explain that?
Yeah, 2 years ago, the county agreed to pay for 2 hotspots per each library in St. Croix County. And its residents request the hotspot just like they request a book. And they can check out the hotspot for, I believe it's 2 weeks. And then they have to return it, and they can put their name back on the list, but they have to wait for their turn. Some libraries have 6 or 8 hotspots. Some only have 2. But I can say with 100% certainty that the hotspots, no matter how many a library has, they are out. Because there's a lot of areas in St. Croix County where there is not internet access, and people need them, and that's why there's always a waiting list for these hotspots. There was a presentation before the board, and I can get you that and forward it to you if you'd like to know. But that's...
No, that wouldn't be necessary, but thank you for the explanation. I see we're only going to have 2 for each of these. It's quite a bit of money for 2 hotspots. Boy, I understand they're needed.
Further discussion or questions on the hotspot question? Okay, so I think we're finally ready to vote on this, and let me restate it here and correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy. We have a motion and a second on the floor to remove the hotspots from the, well, we already did that, to change the amount of the funding on the hotspots to $941, I believe it was. I'm sorry, $791.64. Yeah. Yeah, okay, everybody's clear on that then. So we will now vote on the hotspot motion. At this time, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed. Carries unanimously. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, as Corp Counsel Cox, we have a motion on the floor to call the question, the previous question, and I've had one objection to that. So I think we're back to the point on the library funding that we have, I believe, a motion then existing to call the question, and if it's going to go anywhere, we need a second on that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, I see a second from Supervisor Anderson. And any discussion on this, and it will take 2/3 vote, I understand. Supervisor Cook.
Mr. Chair, I would also object to this. I know I don't need to procedurally, but I think there's additional conversation that needs to happen about this issue. So I hope that we will vote down the call for the question.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to call a question. So at this time, then, I believe we'll take a roll. I'm sorry, Ken? Yeah, I think we'll take a roll call vote on this just to make sure it's very clear. So Cindy, would you do the roll call vote on that, please?
Is this to call the question, or is this to?
This is to call the question, yes.
Ed Schachner? No. Sean Anderson?
No.
Bob Long?
No.
Kathy Leaf?
Yes.
Kara Cook?
No.
Tim Hall?
Yes.
Paul Burning?
No.
Rick Otino?
No.
Bob Fiedler? No. Dave Osnes?
No.
Scott Counter?
No.
Dan Hansen?
Yes.
Scotty Yard?
Yes.
Greg Telejohn?
Yes.
Dave Peterson?
Yes.
Paulette Anderson?
Yes.
Judy Achterhoff?
Yes.
Shelley Tomschick? Yes. Bill Peavy?
Yes.
Ten yes, 9 no.
I think the math indicates that did not carry then, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll continue discussion. Supervisor Burning.
So I'll take the time here, I won't take up too much more time. But ask yourselves as supervisors this. If the town of St. Joe came to us and said, I wanted to form my own library, would we require them to pay the county levy that they would be no longer paying if they chose to form their own library? If the town of Hudson came to the county board and said, we want to create our own library, would we expect them to make up for the loss in revenue for them leaving the county levy? If the village of North Hudson did the same thing and said, we would like to create our own library, and they came before this very board, would we hold them in perpetuity for the amount of revenue that they are going to no longer pay? Well, ladies and gentlemen, in 2002 and in 2004, the three municipalities said we would like to have our own library that we fund under our own levy. They chose to join with the city of Hudson in an effort to be cost effective in sharing a director, a building, and books, among other things. So by saying that the 30% needs to be redistributed, and by saying that in perpetuity these municipalities need to continue to be punished, or the rural tax usage of their library that they chose to fund themselves taken away, you in essence are telling the village of North Hudson, the town of Hudson, and the town of St. Joe that you really do not get to have your own library. We want the revenue from your residents. And as far as straightening out our funding, that should not be the call of any of us when it comes to reimbursing a library for the rural tax. That's emotional, that is someone's opinion, and how the joint library funds itself should have no bearing on whether or not the county reimburses our library at 100%. So as a board member from the city of Hudson, representing a part of that city who's impacted by this, I would urge my fellow board supervisors that touch any of the municipalities that are affected by this and vote down this resolution. Thank you.
Supervisor Achterhoff.
No one's going to say, okay. Right now, we have 19 supervisors here. 5 of them represent the Hudson Library. The other libraries are split between the other supervisors. If we're going to get to the point of vote, I'm saying that it should be then 1 vote per library in regards to what they want to do. But I'm prejudiced there because I'm from the east side of the county, and that's what I get all the time from people. But it still goes back to the original agreement that was reneged upon. I mean, if we're going to say it's okay for Hudson to renege on that agreement, what agreements are we going to say they can't renege on, or what they shouldn't? It was a legally drawn up document, to my knowledge, and it was reneged on. That is the word that's been used. So if we allow this to happen by rewarding Hudson Library and, well, okay, forget the words reward. All I know is that if we allow Hudson to renege on this, then what is the delineation with any agreement that the county may make?
Supervisor Anderson.
2 points, Mr. Chair. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cox, but if this was a legally drawn up agreement, the county would be taking action against the Hudson Area Library, correct?
Yeah, correct. I was asked to look into this a while ago. It's certainly not an enforceable agreement for many reasons, including the fact that the approval of participation in a joint library is a legislative action by the board, and the fact that it was never a written agreement. So I don't believe it to be enforceable.
And then the second thing is, when we're looking at the enforcing it by libraries, some libraries serve many more people in a much larger population than other libraries do. The Hudson Area Library serves, more than just one municipality or small township. So that's my argument against that. Thank you.
Supervisor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was an agreement in 2002, and I respect that agreement. I respect the intent of that agreement and the expectations going forward about the funding structure. But then in 2012, the Hudson Joint Library made a decision based on a variety of factors, and I think that public entities have the ability and should be looking at their current situation and their current environment as they make budget decisions. While it's been described as reneging, I don't see that. I see it as an entity looking at its costs and looking at the environment that it's operating in and making a decision. It's also been suggested that the Hudson Joint Area Library should be funding itself. As a body, that's, as Supervisor Burning stated, that's not our job to determine what the funding is and how each community makes their budget. But what we can do, and what I can do as a representative of the citizens in Hudson and District 5, is seek funding for our library, which is important. And so I will be voting against the current resolution.
Supervisor Long.
I'll be brief, I promise. I see this, basically we're penalizing the Hudson Library for reneging on the agreement. And we've done so for 5 years now, to the tune of probably about an average of about $25,000 a year. So they've paid, $120 to $130 some $1,000 for reneging on the agreement. And I think at some point, we have to determine they paid their restitution, and we need to move on. And I think they've paid that penalty, and continuing it, I think is not appropriate. As far as the agreement, if they were to reinstate that agreement and pay the other municipalities, it would basically put them out of business. Is that what you want?
Supervisor Hall?
My understanding is that the funding situation that the Hudson Library finds itself in is from previous administration's attempt to limit the levying and budgeting for that library. That's not the county's problem. Though I do represent a district in Hudson, I also believe that when you enter into agreements, you honor them. And if you cannot honor them, you withdraw from them publicly and permanently. You can't have it both ways. And for that reason, I will be voting for the resolution.
Is there anyone else who has not spoken on this issue that would like to speak? At this time, then, I think that we probably discussed this infinitum here, so we'll call a vote on this at the present time. I think probably the simplest would be a show of hands. So at this time, all those in favor, let's repeat the resolution here to make sure we all understand what it is. And it's a resolution establishing the library levy as presented from the board, from the administration committee, with no changes except that we remove the hotspots out of it. So at this time, all those in favor of the levy resolution, hold your hand up, right hand. Cindy, do you want to count there? Oh.
There are 3 ayes on the board. Oh. Kathy Leaf, Craig Telejohn, Tim Hall.
Tim Hall. 13? 13? Thank you. Okay, all those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, the count is 13-6, the motion carries. Next item of business will be the resolution initiating a county administrator search. And Patrick, you want to cover that? Oh, wait a minute, I need a motion to bring that forward. I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the resolution initiating county administrator search.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Long, second by Supervisor Ard to do the search for the county administrator. Pat?
Yeah, the resolution speaks for itself. The administration committee is recommending requests for proposals from governmental executive search firms to begin the process of filling the county administrator's position, and the admin committee will oversee that process.
Okay, questions, comments? Supervisor Achterhoff.
As usual. I just know that it says the proposal due date is August 13th. That's only 9 days from now. Is that long enough for people to see it and to I mean, I realize you're leaving, Pat, but is that, we usually allow a little bit more time, but I mean, that's just a question I had.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of time. In fact, we've already been contacted by several of the search firms, and the RFP that is attached is very boilerplate language, so you'll have plenty of responses in that short time frame. Yep.
Supervisor Shatner.
I was just kind of curious why we're spending the time and energy to do this when we actually have a person that's well qualified in Ken Witt, our assistant county administrator. I don't think there's anybody in the room here that doesn't think he'd be more than qualified, and we actually got a good recommendation from our current administrator. I think we should just offer the job to him. That's my recommendation, and we should be looking for an assistant county administrator, not a county administrator.
I'll have Supervisor Corp Counsel Cox, I think, address that. I had this discussion with him. And Scott, do you want to kind of explain that? And then if you choose to make a motion, you're certainly welcome to.
Well, the board's free to do whatever it wants with regard to the hiring. All other county positions are advertised. We have an affirmative action policy that requires or suggests that we competitively recruit for all positions. Certainly, if the board were to do that, not recruit, there would be some risk involved, but ultimately that's the board's choice.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Supervisor Tomczyk.
I would ask Corp Counsel what the risks are as far as if that's what we decided to do.
Well, theoretically, you could get somebody who's qualified and is not able to apply, sue the county for not following its own policies and practices.
I'll jump in and try to answer your question maybe from a little different perspective. I think the risk would be minimal. And I support the comments made by Supervisor Schachner.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, on the board, who was it spoke? Kathy?
Kathy.
Go ahead,
Yeah, so
Supervisor.
I have nothing against Ken. I think he's done a great job, but I believe in transparency and a thorough search process. This job is too important for us to take it lightly. And I realize even though we are in the midst of a pandemic and that might be people's anxiousness to do this as an appointment, I think that we need to be totally transparent and do a proper search and screen.
Supervisor Anderson.
Yeah, just to add what Supervisor Leaf said, this is nothing against Mr. Witt. It's just we gotta, if we change set a different precedent for the top full-time position in the county, then what's stopping that from changing going forward?
Supervisor Long.
Yeah, that's the discussion that we had in the administration committee, and we really believe that it's critical that we have a totally transparent process for the benefit of the employees of the county as well as the citizens, and make sure that we're doing our due diligence in that process, even recognizing that the Assistant Administrator Witt is clearly a preferred candidate. I'm sure we'd all agree on that.
Any other questions or comments?
One real quick one.
Go ahead, Supervisor Antino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we should go forward with this search so that there is no legal aspects, and there's nothing that why it wouldn't prevent Ken from applying. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And I think that's the way we should go forward.
Further questions or comments? I think we're ready to vote on this then. So all those in favor of authorizing the county administration search, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. The next item then would be temporary additional compensation for the Assistant County Administrator, Supervisor Long.
Move to approve the resolution establishing temporary additional compensation for the Assistant County Administrator.
Second.
Give a motion and a second to increase the compensation for the Assistant County Administrator as he steps into the administrator duties in the interim. And discussion. Supervisor Long.
Yeah, it was pointed out to us that there's a succession policy that was put into effect in January 2019 that basically says the Assistant County Administrator will assume the duties of the County Administrator in the interim until the selection process is complete. And so it seemed appropriate that we adjust or compensate the assistant administrator appropriately given the additional duties in the interim until the selection process is complete.
I guess I don't think it would be improper for me to also relay in the discussion with the admin committee and the fact that Mr. Wood has also apparently had some offers from, or indicated he did not indicate, but we have heard that he's had some offers. So the thought there was that at least this is a good faith, for him to be patient with us while we go through our process. Further questions, comments? Seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote. So at this time, all those in favor of the increased compensation for the interim administrator signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. And at this time, I'll ask the supervisors before we go into closed session. Supervisor Osnes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know it's a bit unusual, but I think after 2.5 hours and we've got 3 fire department heads here, I'm wondering if we would be out of line just hearing from them. It's not going to take them very long and they can be on their way. I think it's based on the conversation we had at our last meeting that if we go into closed session, we might be here for quite some time yet.
Mr. Chair, I would remind, we've got outside counsel on the line, so I would encourage the department heads to be concise in the reports.
Yeah, I think that I'll roll it. We'll go into closed session. I think we need to, hopefully this isn't going to be a long, I'm not at liberty to say, but I'll make a decision here. We're going.
The other alternative is you have all the reports in your packet. Do any board members have questions for any of the department heads? Otherwise, they could be excused.
Okay, unless anybody objects or has questions to the board department reports, I will excuse them. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the department heads are excused. Thank you. Okay, and so before we go into closed session, does anybody need a short break? But I'm thinking that yes. Okay, we need a short break. We're good to go?
Can you hear me, Scott?
I can hear you.
Supervisor Hanson.
I move to approve the mediated settlement in the Caladonna litigation, which would require a payment from the county to Caladonna in the amount of $300,000, and in exchange, the county will receive an environmental non-development easement prohibiting any building development on the property, and a release of any and all claims against the county and the Board of Adjustment, including dismissal of all state and federal lawsuits.
Second.
Who was the second? I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Kathy.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Hanson, a second by Supervisor Leaf to accept the settlement as presented, and discussion. Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote at this time. So all those in, we don't need a roll call on this, do we, Scott?
I don't believe you do.
Okay.
It's a budgeted amount.
Okay, so all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
Ramsey.
Ramsey, and
Thank you, Scott.
both.
Thanks. Ramsey, I'll be talking to you about the release.
All right, and county supervisors and everyone else, it's been a pleasure serving you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, then, the department heads are dismissed. We had no questions on that, so I guess the next thing would be correspondence, or requests for future agenda items. Supervisor Achterhoff?
I just want, if administration, because I think it has to go through, can look at our communications policy. It might need some fine tuning. Is that an acceptable thing to, because I would rather go to admin first than be here. Or how does, I just think our communication policy needs some work, and I don't know to go about doing that.
In what regard? Can you be more specific?
In regard to what happened in the past week.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we can discuss detail. The request can only be made.
Yeah, I just wanted it to be looked
We'll
at.
consider that request for the administration committee, and we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, okay.
Further,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I have a request, and then this would, again, probably need to go through committee, Health and Human Services. Pierce County was successful in passing the ordinance to give additional, not additional powers, but the alteration of the public health officer's duties related to the enforcement of health orders. And I would like to have that on the agenda for HHS.
I would also like to see that. I like the same thing.
Okay, I'll refer that to the Health and Human Services Committee. Any other requests? Supervisor Schottner.
I was just curious whether we were handed out the Wisconsin Counties Association that on the Bayfield County enacting a 2-year moratorium statewide, and I was just wondering whether anybody's interested in taking that up next month. It was presented to us. I was just kind of wondering. Yeah.
I'll
It doesn't
refer
have
that
to be.
to
I was just
community.
wondering if anybody else thought about it, so.
I'll refer that to the Community Development Committee. And
Yeah, I was just going to say we'll put it on community development.
Others? Okay, Cindy, anything for us? Okay. Oh. All right, at this time, I'll close the meeting at 7:49. Thank you all for your patience.